So welcome to my class. In the last class, I introduced the concept of indifference curve, consumers equilibrium, Hicks and Allen approach. And in this, we said that it was maybe more or less like the consumer's equilibrium by utility analysis, only thing that it is ordinal. It doesn't measure utility in terms of absolute terms as 1, 2, 3, 4. It just gives it rank, higher, lower. Now, what is interesting about indifference curve is that it takes up two commodities and it talks about the curve that joins all those combinations of a consumer of those two goods that gives him equal satisfaction. So this is what is indifference curve all about. So I want you to see this as I've just written. I've drawn the curve also. I've joined those points which are giving him equal satisfaction. So there are things that indifference curve takes as given. For example, throughout the analysis that we are going to do, it is assumed that the consumer buys only two goods. The assumption is made more as a matter of convenience because the entire analysis uses graphs liberally and a graph has only two axes. Therefore, only two goods can be represented, one on each axis. So this limitation of graphic presentation has forced the analysis perhaps to assume the consumption of only two goods. So do you think it's unrealistic? Not necessarily. After all, consumer does consume more than two goods, but instead of two goods, we could talk about two groups of goods. For example, we can take as food items and non-food items for consumption, for daily consumption. So the two groups cover the entire range of goods consumed by the consumer. So we can make other such groups. So just to, lend reality to the assumption. But even if you take it as an assumption, it becomes easier to understand. So this is what the indifference curve talks all about, that it is a curve which shows all those combinations or the bundles of two goods that give the same, that is equal level of satisfaction to the consumer. And each point that you see A, B, C, D, which was given, it indicates a combination of two goods. And each combination provides the same level of satisfaction to the consumer. Now the consumer is indifferent or neutral towards these combinations of two goods which give him the same level of satisfaction. And that is why the curve is known as indifference curve. Alright, so this can be explained with the help of this table. It'll become clearer to you. Just look at this table as we see. So in the table, in the first column, we have a bundle. Then we have good X and good Y. And in the fourth column, interestingly, we have what is known as marginal rate of substitution, which means that with a given income, when he goes out to buy two commodities, if he wants more of X, he'll have to sacrifice the Y. So on the X axis, we show good X as it increases, and good Y, that is as he's losing them. He's sacrificing a Y. So now look at the table. It shows different combinations of good X and Y that offer the same amount of satisfaction to the consumer. In the table, bundles like A, B, C and D give same level of satisfaction. So then we plot these on the graph and then we obtain what is known as the indifference curve. Okay. Now an increase in the amount of good X along the indifference curve. Now just look at this. Now look at the table. So when he has good X, 1 of good X, he has 10 of good Y. But now he wants to increase his good X. He wants to have 2 of those. So in this, he has to sacrifice some of Y. So he sacrifices 3Y for 1X. That is the ratio. that is change in y upon change in I. Now suppose that becomes his B combination, 2 and 7. Now he wants more of good x. So for that he goes to 3, and for y, since he has the given money income, he'll sacrifice 2 of good y, which means he'll buy now 5 of good y and 3 of good x. Now let's take the D combination where he doesn't mind 4 of x and 4 of y. So this is how it goes, and you will see that the ratio is given as 3y is to 1x, 2y is to 1x, and 1y is to 1x, which means that the marginal rate of substitution is going down. That is, when he's substituting y for x, it's falling. That I'll do in another lesson, another class. But right now, you just see A, B, C, D, E tells you about the various combinations, the bundle combinations that he gives him equal amount of satisfaction. So this is what it is. Now you just look at this. Now I've made the curve for you. You have to plot the curve like that. And in this we see that an increase in the amount of good x along the indifference curve is associated with a decrease in the amount of good y without affecting the level of satisfaction. I repeat, without affecting the level of satisfaction, because indifference means he's indifferent to all these bundles. So his satisfaction level remains the same no matter what bundle he takes here on this curve. This implies that the slope of the indifference curve is negative. In indifference curve, as a consumer moves along the curve, he substitutes one good for the other good. The rate of substituting between two goods is known as what we've done before. It is known as marginal rate of substitution. So it is important to note that the marginal rate of substitution between the two goods diminishes. So that means as consumer gets more units of good x, his willingness to give up the amount of good y declines. Now for each successive addition of good x, he is prepared to give up lesser and lesser amount of good y to maintain the same level of satisfaction. For example, for a second unit of good x, consumer is prepared to give up 3 units of good y, and for the third unit of good x, he is willing to forego just 2 units of good y, and so on. So this is what we see. But basically, we just want here, MRS will be doing later. Just remember one thing, that all these points A, B, C, D that you see, they are associated with the same level of satisfaction. These are different bundles which give him the same level of satisfaction. That's what has to be kept in mind. And in the next class, we will do marginal rate of substitution. So the question can be define an indifference curve and explain it with the help of a table or a diagram.